Hey guys, it's me again. Sorry for the hiatus. I just had to sort of figure out how to end series. Because, with the Bell and Deku what ifs, I've typically tried to stick to the story pretty closely. But I think I'm probably going to have to change that. Become more like a Kira show and make my own endings by getting the story rolling. Because I don't want to just have a bunch of cliffhangers and stuff like that. Like with what if Deku or what if Bell was a gladiator. Or what if Deku was the meta? I want to give them an actual ending instead of just leaving them hanging there. Where I last left off on what if Deku, well, not what if Deku, what if Issei had the Chaos Flame? Well, let's see, checking. They fought Rias, Gremory, and her group, the episode before that. After that, Rias and her peerage sort of took a back step because they didn't want to take a chance to encounter them. So Rias did her research and sort of found a little bit of the history. Again, like with how most things are in history, since the pretty much heaven and hell won, let's just say they won that conflict, they sort of wrote it in their own light to make it seem like they did a lot better than they actually did. And so, when it came down to it, she only got like a bit of the half-truths and stuff like that. The devils of hell made it seem like the demons of chaos were a lot worse than what they actually were. Instead of just wanting to be left alone, they made them out to be, if I remember, they made them out to be evil, we could say, just like destructive. I haven't gone on to how heaven views them. I will get to that eventually. But where we last left off, on the very end, issei and I believe it was Matsuda. Where is my book? I'm sorry, give me a second. I'm finding my book. I left it out there. I think it's Matsuda. Alright, went back and found it. I believe it was Matsuda. I found my book. Well, it was Matsuda that actually knows about the whole underworld and all that sort of deal. But what has happened last time I recorded this, essentially Mirayama, Katase, and Motohama were wondering where they snuck off to, so they followed Matsuda and Issei, and they saw how Issei transformed into like a chaos demon, sort of, and then they saw Matsuda activate his chaos gear, I'll just say. As they were in all of this, at the very end of their little sparring session, they turned and then they saw their group of friends standing there. As they both just stood there and looked, as the two groups were looking back and forth at each other. As they stood there in complete and utter silence, as Issei's like, okay. As his voice is a little bit different, considering he's activated some of his abilities, he's like, I'm gonna need you to calm down. As right before, after he says that, they all have this massive freak out, like wondering, what is this? What happened to you? Why are you on fire? Why does he, as they're just all throwing on a bunch of questions all at once, as Issei's trying to find a way to phrase it and not completely shatter their view on reality. As Issei tells them to shut up, as he says, he's like, we'll explain it all at my house. So as they follow Issei and Matsuda, as Issei and Matsuda are looking back and forth at each other, having a silent conversation, as it's just like, what are we going to tell your mom? Issei's like, I don't know. It's like, should we be worried? It's like, probably. As Issei's, he didn't want, like I've said before, he doesn't want to involve them in the underworld or the supernatural world. He just thinks it's way too dangerous for that sort of stuff. Matsuda, the only reason why he knows is because he almost died. Then it became his necessity to train him somewhat. So as they're following along, three in the back are just throwing it back and forth like, what's going on? What are they going to do? Motohama's thinking they're going to kill us. As Murayama and Kitejo, shut up, they won't kill us. As Issei looks back at him as he hears kill, he looks back as he somewhat has serious eyes on at the moment as they take a moment. So they're like, maybe Motohama's right. As when they get home, thankfully Issei's mother is there. As they show up with the entire group, the three sit on the couch while Issei and Matsuda go talk with Mama Issei. And you can just hear and feel her fury somewhat when she learns that Issei and them have been exposed again, as from the couch, the three can feel a very bubbling anger rising up like a tsunami of lava is about to crash down. Dog's just standing there looking at everything as he can feel the sort of intense fury that's radiating off Mama Issei. So he goes and hides under the table. He's a smart dog. As when Issei's mother comes in, she tells both the boys to sit on two separate chairs. As they do this... Sorry? Yawning. Mama Issei says, how much did you see? She's like, as they're all signs like, well, we saw magic? As Issei's mom is just like, magic, alright. Anything else? She's just like, not that we're aware of? Like, as Monohama's like, we saw Issei turn into some weird fire thingy. And, Matsuda had weird fire object things. She's like, tell me, why weren't you boys more careful? As Issei's just like, we got lost in the moment. As she's like, what was that, dearie? As she leans her ear a little closer as she's listening to his excuse. She's like, we weren't paying attention. She's like, right. Paying attention. And she's like, right. And then she goes over to Matsuda. It's like, Matsuda, dearie. As Matsuda freezes for a while as he can feel the malice coming off her voice. She's like, explain to me your side of things. It's like, well, Mama Issei. She's like, yes. As he can just sort of shrinks a little bit by little. Is like, we got a bit intense with the sparring. And yes, as she's nodding her head along, as she puts a hand on his shoulder, he's like, come on, keep going. Let's see how far you dig. As he's just like, I don't want to anymore. She's like, that's a smart choice. As she claps her hands together. So, we are in a bit of a conundrum, are we not? As they all are looking between each other, and Issei's just like, oh my god, what have we done? As she's like, now, I will let this pass. I will. It won't be anything much. But, as she's walking around the room, as she passes behind Issei, as she takes her fist and slams it down to his head, she's like, what the hell were you thinking? You didn't even put up a ward or nothing? So that way there was no chance of you being spotted or felt? He's like, well, we put up small ones. And like, you put up small ones. She brings her fist back down and punches him in the head again. He's like, ow. He's like, you can fix that later. I swear to... As she just like walks away for a second, as she's looking like into the corner of the room, she's like, what am I gonna do with this boy? What am I gonna do with this boy, honey? She's rubbing her forehead back up and down. She's like, questions. As the three on the couch, what? And he's like, questions. You got questions? Ask, and we will answer. As Ma Issei finally takes a seat, and see, like, pretty much right next to issei. Come on, ask your questions. All questions are welcome. Now, as Motohama's about to say something, and then Katase and them just slam their hands over his mouth. He's like, shut up. She's like, what? He's like, we know how you are. Shut up. As Motohama's just, oh, what's it going to say? It's like that. It's just like, what are we going to ask? As he goes dead silent, they're like, yeah, that's what we thought. So, as Katase is the first one to go, she's like, what exactly are you? As sorry, Mama Issei's like, I am human-ish. As Katase Murayama's like, excuse us? Is like, it's a long story, but let's just say a creature of supernatural origin blessed me with some power and it slightly altered me. I'm not unhuman, though I'm not completely human. If you know what I mean. It's like, oh, okay, so you're like a half-breed of something? She's like, not quite there. It's like, you know how soul works. As she goes on to try to explain what, as I'll just call it, what her particular thing is an ashen one. Like from Dark Souls 3, like how they get that ember stuff. As I explained before, that is somewhat what she looks like when she activates it. She explains an ashen one as somebody who has had a portion of their soul somewhat, not replaced, but kindled with the Chaos Flame. As they sort of go on that, what was the Chaos Flame? As she has Issei explain that, because that's sort of his story. As he goes down the line, like a very brief version, but essentially the Chaos Flame is something that's been passed down from generation to generation in the family. And it was his dad's, but now it's his, since his dad is dead. As they all understand this and nod their head like, alright, so, we should, is there anything, as Motohama's like, how do we get cool weapons like Matsuda? As Matsuda's just like, dude. As Motohama's just like, what am I, like, look at you, man. When you're like that, you're like a chick magnet. As yes, the duo, or I'll say trio, will be somewhat similar to what they were. Issei's very dialed back. Same thing with both the other boys, but they still have it a little bit in them, if you know what I mean. So, as they're all talking back and forth, they go on to explain what Chaos Gear is and how Issei has made it. And now they get a big question asked them. What would they do with this information? Well, all three of them really agree that they should keep it to themselves because they have no idea what else is out there. And then Issei actually poses the question to them, would they like to learn to train? Because now that this has happened, there's chances that they're going to probably have more run-ins with the supernatural. And he'd rather avoid that fate if they can. As they're talking back and forth, eventually they all settle on, like, yes, they would like to get into this and learn how to use some form of Chaos Gear. As the girls have already put forth taking their, I think they're called Shinai? Shinai? Something like that? Yeah. Their Kendo Shinai bamboo katana things. The things that they use for their practice. Sorry about that. Just wanted to make sure I had it right. They essentially state they already are getting some form of training in the sword fighting. And so the best way for their Chaos Gear to be would be with like somewhat of a sword fighter. Motohama goes on to say that really he isn't that physically gifted, nor has he ever really been in an actual fight. The group of them actually somewhat agreed to this, saying that it may be best that he doesn't get into fighting. But Issei's mom still says he's going to have to train a lot just in case the day comes that he does have to fight. As she's explained to him, about the pyromancies and that he may be able to use his. He is smarter than like Matsuda, Murayama, and them. He's actually has higher test scores and some of that and things like that. I'll say in this in this what if he has a higher. He is more intelligent. He also has a very keen eye for spotting like differences and stuff. So she talks about how he can somewhat be like a scanner almost. Like he'll look out for things that maybe the group of them would forget in the whole. So that way, like if there's an ambush or something, he can help work them around, and find different ways to solutions. As he somewhat agrees to this, Issei feels dread for the boy because his mom's training isn't exactly what you would call gentle. She will teach him pyromancies. Like, let's say she tries to teach him fireball. She will throw fireballs at him. Because she believes the best way to learn the magic is to have it used against you. He's terrified. Legitimately, he's terrified as when Issei gets his dread look, he's like, I will pray for your survival. As Motohama's freaking out, Matsuda and Issei are like, at least it's going to be a hell of a lot easier keeping all this under, like, not having to keep this to ourselves. He's like, yeah. As they're rubbing their forehead, you can flash back over to Ria's Grimoire, as she is still trying to dig up more information about the Chaos Demons. She's digging and digging, and she still can't find nothing really concrete, so she's curious as to why she isn't able to find anything concrete. Because typically, if there was a victory or something, there would be loads upon loads of things documented, and at the very least, some things may have actually joined their side in an attempt to avoid extinction, as it says that they were destroyed entirely in the books. Or the history book she has read. Well, I'll say to call it a book is a bit of an overstatement. It was more like, as stupid as it sounds, and how they have files in like agent movies like Black Widow and stuff like that, like secret agents. That's essentially the entire graph of what she had learned, was just a few pages of information where it described what they fought, how they fought, and how they won. As I'll put, like I said, I put win in quotation marks. What they did was pull a cheap move. They were losing the ground war. But I digress. Rias is still digging, and she is drawing some attention because there are elders in the underworld that were around during the, as they would call it, the culling or the eradication. As where she's poking her nose, this gets noted by a few elders, and they actually approach her father to get her to stop this. That this is not of her concern, and that shouldn't be her concern because the events are long overdone with. Her father doesn't necessarily agree, as he has encouraged her to be more like seeking of knowledge, to actually find information and to actually use it to help her learn from the past. The elders are being quite pushy though, and they're still talking, as there's still talks of arranged marriages that are still going on within the underworld. Because you guys remember, she was arranged to marry Riser Phoenix, and this is actually where the elders, trying to divert their attention, actually starts pulling in on the strings of saying she should be in an arranged marriage, so that way they can have more pure devils going about. As that is how that is going to go. As Rias is torn away from her books and all that as she learns about this, as she still says that she is not going to marry somebody she doesn't love. As the elders, I wouldn't say her father is fully on board with it, but he sort of does have to bend to the will of the elders at some points. Because as I remember, even though Sir Zex is a Mao, he really can't show favoritism because he is the one of the lords of the underworld. He can't show favoritism to his family just because he wants to. as this is how it's going to spiral into a whole debacle leading into the actual high school DxD. And I think that's where I'm going to be ending this one off at. It's short, but I have a game plan to get going, and I don't want to have to use up too much filler, because I could pad this with maybe another 10 minutes, but it wouldn't really be anything noteworthy of watching. But anyways, hope you guys have enjoyed this. Hope you guys continue to enjoy this, and I hope you